Hi, everybody, and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And today we're looking at SOS.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it means someone's in trouble.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in any situation where you might have thought, I might have to use this?
I think I've gotten lost while hiking or camping a couple of times. Maybe and I thought like, oh, shoot, well, what do I do? Just, draw SOS in the sand because I didn't know Morse code.
Yeah, and probably haven't got anything to send it with anyway.
Yeah, or a flashlight, I guess, but no. Yeah. Thankfully, I'm all right.
Yeah, I've been lost in cities, but there's not much. I mean, you can just go and find somebody. Even at night, you can get a taxi or something.
Exactly.
Out in nature, there was one time where I avoided danger because there was a trail. I was on my own and there were ropes climbing up rocks. And I thought, I could probably do this. But if I slipped, fell, etc., then I'm on my own and nobody is around me.
Yeah, especially if you're hurt.
Yes, that was the feeling that if something went wrong, I'd be stuck by myself out here. So I decided to give up, turn around, go back, and return in a few weeks with a group, and we all climbed up together. So I didn't place myself in a situation where SOS could be needed.
That's a good idea. So if you're ever out in nature and you think you see a situation where you could get badly hurt, don't do it.
Yeah. So where does this idea of SOS come from, though? That's what our article's about, so let's read through and find out. Around the world, people know that the letters SOS are a call for help. But why is this code universal? We know that it was designed to be short and easy to send, which is vital when an emergency situation occurs. However, that doesn't explain why people in every country use it. In order to fully explore the story behind SOS, we need to go back to the early 1900s. At that time, wireless communication was becoming common on ships, and Morse code had become well established throughout the US and Europe. However, there was no prevailing standard, so there were many sets of abbreviations being used in different countries. For example, British radio telegraph operators used CQD for distress calls, because CQ addressed all stations and D stood for distress. Thus, CQD was understood to mean all stations distress. In 1905, Germany adopted SOS. The next year, at a convention to discuss radio issues in Berlin, delegates advocated making the SOS signal universal. It soon spread through Europe, but wasn't officially adopted by the US until 1912, after the sinking of the Titanic. A typical misconception is that SOS stands for Save Our Ship or Save Our Souls, but neither is correct. In fact, SOS ... in Morse was chosen precisely because those letters were not an acronym and didn't stand for anything. It was important that the signal be distinct from any other, so that it would be easy to recognize. It's also straightforward to send in Morse code, and it looks the same upside down or in reverse. Though voice radio has replaced Morse code, SOS can still be used to call for help. Rescue workers still understand that with any signal mechanism, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short means help. If you need assistance at night, you can alert rescuers like this with a flashlight. During the day, you can use a mirror to reflect the sun's rays, or use blasts on a whistle to send an audible call. If you enjoy hiking, camping, boating, or other outdoor activities, it could be crucial to know how to call for help in emergencies.
All right, so we start out by learning about SOS, the history of the famous distress call. So a distress call, right off the bat, is a call for distress. Well, a call about being in distress. If you're in distress, that means you're in trouble. means you really need somebody's help, just like we've been talking about. So that's when you would send out a distress call of some kind.
Exactly. You could think of like an army base under attack would send out a distress call.
Yeah, like maybe a siren.
Yeah, somebody lost in the... Yeah, it's almost like an air raid siren, but that means kind of danger is coming rather than we're in danger, send help. So yeah, that's the distress call, and we know around the world people know that the letters SOS are a call for help. It's not just in English, it works in any language.
Exactly. Yeah, so and that makes it universal, and you ask the question, but why is this code universal? And I think you kind of just answered it, Pat, but there is more to explain to it than that. We know that it was designed to be short and easy to send. It's only 3 letters, SOS, which is vital when an emergency situation occurs. Yeah, you don't want to waste any time.
Right, or make it difficult to send, like, oh, how do I do this? Like, no, we need it to be easy and quick and something anybody can learn and remember and do.
Yeah.
However, this doesn't explain why people in every country use it. And that makes sense. This is old enough so that not everybody in the world was always talking to each other easily. So you could imagine all a bunch of different countries creating their own little signals to use that's only really understood by speakers of their language or people from their country.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did this actually become kind of something the whole world understands? And we say in order to fully explore the story behind SOS, we need to go back to the early 1900s. So this has been around for over a century.
Yeah, maybe about 120 years, something like that. So what the next paragraph begins by saying is, at that time, wireless communication was becoming common on ships. What do you know? They had Wi-Fi. Just kidding. And Morse code had become well established throughout the US and Europe. So Morse code here, we will talk about that in a second, but first let me talk about this word established, to be well established. When something is established, it could first of all mean that this is the time when it begins, it's set up. But when something becomes well established, that means it's used as a habit. It's something that people will commonly go to as sort of like something that is a normal part of life for them.
Yeah, it's recognized.
Yeah, it's
kind of there and everybody knows about it and what it is.
Yeah.
So Morse code is this kind of pattern of dots and dashes.
Yes.
It's a way to send signals, basically.
Yeah, so every letter in the alphabet has a corresponding dot-dash pattern. So S is 3 dots, O is 3 dashes.
Yeah.
And so that's why you get 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots. That's SOS.
Yeah, there were machines that you could tap on that would send it to somebody.
Telegraphs.
Yeah, to receive it. You could use it on, blasts of light or whistles, as we'll see later. It was just this code. What we know, though, is that for wireless communication, however, there was no prevailing standard. So there were many sets of abbreviations being used in different countries, just kind of like we imagined would happen.
Yeah.
There was no prevailing standard. Something that is prevailing is the most common. It's kind of the one that everybody uses. It's the one that is the most popular and the most used at any particular time. So you'd say today the prevailing means of communication is by smartphone.
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than, by email, which is kind of...
Or dumb phone.
Used, or, dumb phones. Snail mail, sending letters has really kind of fallen out of use.
Yeah, the post office is not too great.
Right, and people don't even call each other that often anymore. It's instant messages and stuff.
Yeah, so I'd say the prevailing way of communicating in Taiwan is probably line.
You would say so, yeah.
So, there was no prevailing standard at the time, so Morse code was just used in North America and Europe. So, of course, different countries had different things. For example, British radio telegraph operators used CQD for distress calls because CQ addressed all stations and D stood for distress. So, in order to know that, you'd have to know that D in English means distress, or distress, is an English word for D. And CQ Do you know where that comes from?
I've been trying to work it out.
Maybe it's just a code.
Yeah, it may have just been, they may have had other, Q something or C something would mean like just the headquarters and CQ just is everybody.
Maybe it's that C and Q are not easy to confuse with other letters.
Could be, or it could be some, it's almost like I think it's like going to end up being a Latin word because loads of them begin with Q.
Oh, something quo.
Something funny like that the British would have done in the old times when they were trying to be clever.
I see, yeah. Although radio wouldn't have appeared until about the 19th century, so still. But, maybe they were still trying to be, like you said, clever. So they used CQD, and that stood for distress. D stood for distressed. Now, when something stands for something, that means that it represents that thing. It symbolizes it. So D is a symbol for distress because it's the first letter.
Yep, and therefore CQD stood for, or was understood to mean, all stations distress. If you were in Britain at the time and you saw this appearing on Morse Code or you heard it over the radio, you knew that whoever was sending it to every radio station, and it meant distress. Whoever can, whoever's closest, come and help.
Yeah, I remember famously hearing that this was the signal the Titanic sent, wasn't it?
I have no idea, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I think so, because, of course, they mentioned this a little bit later. But before that, in 1905, Germany adopted SOS. So now we know already that it's probably not English because in Germany they speak German. So SOS, they adopted it in 1905, which is quite a while now.
Yep. So they adopted it. Every other country has got its own thing, but we've still got to make it universal. And we know the next year, so 1906, there was a convention to discuss radio issues in Berlin. So radio operators, scientists, engineers kind of all got together in Berlin. This is 10 years and more before the First World War, so countries are still kind of competing, but also cooperating, sharing things at this point.
It's peacetime.
Exactly. And at this convention, this big kind of conference, this meeting of expert minds, delegates advocated making the SOS signal universal. So a delegate is kind of like a representative. It's somebody who has been chosen to go to a certain place and sort of act for and speak for a larger group. For example, when we vote for people, what we're voting for is a delegate for our area to go to the governing body, the parliament, or the legislative, the Lieferung, whatever you call it, and say, you are representing our area. You should speak about our views and our problems and, vote for our opinions and what we want to say. That's why we've chosen you as our guy or girl.
Yeah, exactly. And when they advocate for something, well, what you advocate for, you speak up for. You speak in favor of it. So if you are an advocate, which is the noun form of advocate, you are a person who has a strong belief in something and you want to push that belief and make sure that other people hear it and can follow it. So advocating for something means to speak in favor of something. So they're basically speaking in favor of making SOS universal.
Yeah, so maybe Germany chose a handful of engineers and said, right, you guys, you go there, you explain what we've come up with, this SOS idea, tell everybody why it's good, and
get
really,
them to adopt it.
Yeah, really encourage them to start using it as well. And if they see all its benefits, I'm sure they will. It doesn't specifically say German delegates here, so it may have been a few other people. They'd already talked to them before the conference, people in Europe, and said, hey guys, let's use this because all these small European countries are all connected and close to each other. So, let's help each other out. Say you're up in the mountains, you could be heard by Austrians or Swiss or somewhere else, all in that same set of mountains.
Exactly.
So we need one signal that's understood by everybody.
And of course, no matter where you are, you want to be able to get help. So that's why it's to everyone's advantage to have a universal help signal.
We see then it soon spread through Europe, but wasn't officially adopted by the US until 1912 after the sinking of the Titanic. So officially adopted would mean like some people in the US were using it maybe more and more in different parts, but it wasn't like government or army or official standard until the Titanic sank, and then everyone's like, you know what, let's all use the same thing because it just makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like the US is always kind of the last guy in line when it comes to adopting things that Europe comes up with.
Well, I'm sure everybody had maybe at this conference, this convention, everybody had their own idea, and they're like, no, you should use ours because.
Yeah, I don't even know what the US signal was before SOS.
No, I mean, we've got the British one. Maybe there was,
maybe they were using that.
Could have been a different pattern.
Because there was a lot of ships going across the Atlantic between the UK and the US at that time. So maybe we also use CQD.
Yeah, it could be. Or maybe there was just another one. It could have been something like Save Us or something. Something basic, any kind of code.
Help. H-E-L-P.
Yes. Well, we'll look a bit more into SOS and what it means and why it was chosen and what its advantages are in just a moment. But right now, we'll take a short break.
All right, we are back and we are midway through our article on SOS, this now universal standard that is using, Morse Code that we've kind of talked about a little bit and was adopted throughout Europe and the US by about 1912 and probably has been adopted by just about every other country that has boats going out now too. Yeah, so now we go on and we see a typical misconception about SOS. A typical misconception is that SOS stands for Save Our Ship or Save Our Souls, but neither is correct. So it doesn't stand for either of these things. That is a misconception.
It was certainly one that I had. I thought it was Save Our Souls.
Yeah, I think I used to think that as a child too, but I didn't really think about it after that. But it makes sense that it would not really stand for anything. And like I said, it's a misconception. It is a wrong belief. That's what misconception means. When you see mis, that means wrong or negative, and then concept is an idea. So a misconception is having the wrong idea. It just means that you, heard this information, which probably somebody thought was the right thing, but it's actually not the truth, even though a lot of people may believe it is, which is why it's a typical misconception or a common misconception.
Right. So what does SOS stand for? Well, the next sentence says, in fact, SOS was chosen precisely because those letters were not an acronym and didn't stand for anything. We've also got a little bit in parentheses here where we give you the Morse code, dot and dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, dot, dot. That is the pattern. 3 short, 3 long, in other words.
Yeah.
So the dot, 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 we can tell it's going to be the S because there's 2 of them. And so therefore the blank or the dash, dash, dash is the O. And that's the Morse code version. And it was chosen precisely because they're not an acronym. An acronym is a set of letters that are like the first letters of a short sentence.
Yeah.
Save Our Ship or Save Our Souls would have been... SOS could have been an acronym for them. TV is an acronym for television.
Yeah.
Things
APP.
like that.
APP is not an acronym for anything. It's short for application.
Yeah, that's right. If the piece of paper I'm holding now says ED on it, because ED is an acronym for English Digest, our magazine. But it was chosen precisely because these letters don't stand for anything. There's no words to go with the letters. We use the word precisely to mean exactly, and it's kind of used to emphasize the truth or the accuracy of a statement. And it's also saying without vagueness. So this is 100% why they chose this, because it doesn't stand for anything. And if it doesn't stand for anything, no particular language is involved.
Yeah, exactly. It's very equal.
Yeah, anyone can use it because it's just the letters. Almost everybody uses the same alphabet if they don't use the same language. So SOS will work in a lot more countries than Save Our Souls would.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're not going to use SOS or if you don't know SOS, the only other thing you can really do to be a universal call for help is to scream.
Yeah. I mean, I would say Mayday is
Mayday.
reasonably... I think that's fallen out, but that's French, so...
Yeah, Mayday.
Yeah. Help me, basically.
Yeah.
That's one reason why Mayday maybe isn't as commonly used or it's not as universal as SOS.
Yeah, it didn't actually come from a French word, and then everybody actually thinks it means May Day, like M-A-Y-D-A-Y.
And it's like M''AIDEZ or something.
Mayday.
Aider is like
Mayday.
Aidez-moi or aidez-moi.
Aidez-moi.
Something like that. My French is terrible. Let's move on.
Mine is worse. Okay. So it was important that the signal be distinct from any other so that it would be easy to recognize. That's right. So nothing else really looks like SOS, and it doesn't look like anything else, and that makes it distinct. To be distinct means to be very different from anything else and very easy to stand out, very easy to be recognized, like the sentence says.
Yeah, and you're not going to confuse it. If someone hears it, they're not going to be like, hey, did he say SOS or SUS? Because both things mean different. No, there's nothing like it, so everyone's going to be sure what it means. We also see it's straightforward to send in Morse code with that dot and dash thing, and it looks the same upside down or in reverse.
That's true.
Yeah, so straightforward means it's easy, it's clear. There's no kind of confusion about it. There's no real possibility of it being misunderstood.
You can't get it mixed up.
Yeah, it's a very clear kind of communication, and it's not difficult for anyone to do. You don't have to remember like dot, dash, dash, dot, dot, dash, 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 dot, dash, dot. You just go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks the same upside down or in reverse, certainly in Morse code, but even the letters.
Yeah, exactly. So in reverse would mean backward. So if you turn SOS upside down, it's still SOS. Flip it around backwards, it's still SOS. Backward and upside down, still SOS.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Same with if the piece of paper you're writing, you've got the Morse code on it, upside down, back to front, it still looks exactly the same. Take your magazine and spin it round.
If you look at it sideways, I'm trying to think what it looks like. Kind of, I don't know.
Even then, you'd probably understand that it's 3, 3, 3.
Yeah,
so
you can't mistake it for any other letters, even sideways. Okay. O is still O.
Yep, so that's why it was such a good code. And it's still in use. We see in the article, though voice radio has replaced Morse code, SOS can still be used to call for help. So
rescue workers still understand that with any signal mechanism, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short means help. Yeah, so exactly. If you use any signal mechanism. Now, mechanism is something that you use to complete a task or to perform a function. And it comes from the word machine. So a mechanism is something that a machine performs. You can also use it to talk about the functions of your body, like your mechanism for sleep, the mechanism that you use to talk, which is your lungs, mouth, tongue, throat, all of that. That's your voice mechanism, those sorts of things. So, yeah, a mechanism could be a mechanism for using SOS could be like a flashlight.
Yep.
It could be making a loud noise with something like, I don't know, a gun?
Yeah.
You could shoot a gun 9 times.
Difficult to shoot a gun like 3 long gunshots that don't really exist.
You have to go boom, 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 boom. Boom, and so on.
I'm thinking of sending up smoke signals.
Yes.
You could do 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. No problem there. We mention a couple coming up, but through whatever mechanism, whatever means or way of making a signal you have, they're all going to mean the same thing.
Yeah.
So here are a couple of examples. If you need assistance at night, you can alert rescuers like this with a flashlight. So you flick it on and off. 3 short ones, 3 long ones, 3 short ones. Or have it on all the time and just kind of cover the end with your hand to do those kinds of bursts. And this will alert rescuers. To alert somebody is to warn a person of danger. Now, this can warn them of danger to them, or just warn them generally of danger, in this case, danger to you. So you could wave a flag to alert somebody. You could send them a message like, hey, the teacher's coming, stop misbehaving. That would be alerting them.
That's true.
Something like that. You know, red is often alerting people. You see a red light, you stop because you don't want to drive into traffic. You're being alerted that you shouldn't be driving right now.
Yeah, or it doesn't even have to be danger. It could just be something that you should be aware of. So like if there's, the air raid practices that they usually have every year here, you'll get an alert for that on your phone. You'll be alerted about that.
Earthquakes. There's an earthquake coming in like a second.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on to something. And then it starts shaking.
Yeah. So what else can you do? During the day, you can use a mirror to reflect the sun's rays, or use blasts on a whistle to send an audible call. So blasts on a whistle and send an audible call. To blast would be to blow into the whistle really, really hard because that's what you have to do in order to get the whistle to make a sound. And if it's audible, that means you can hear it. So you can't always hear Morse code. Maybe you use a mirror that's visible, but that's not audible. You can't hear a mirror.
Yeah, a blast, I imagine, like if you just took a whistle and blew on it kind of softly, you wouldn't get much. But blowing on it hard, really putting all the air in your lungs into each blow, that'll make it a blast. It'll make a much louder, shriller sound that people will hear.
Like what a traffic cop will do.
Yeah, like the traffic cop, something like that. So the article concludes by saying, if you enjoy hiking, camping, boating, or other outdoor activities, it could be crucial to know how to call for help in emergencies. So yeah, we've talked about being outside. Boating is a good one because there are a lot more dangers out there on the water, and help could be a lot further away. But in some ways, it can be easier to send it because there's no hills in the way. So
True.
a signal could be seen from further off. But yeah, you might really need help if you're at trouble at sea. People are likely to be a lot further off.
Yeah, which is when you want a radio.
So, yep, any kind of situation where you might be outside, it could be crucial, it could be really important. We use the word vital in the first paragraph, means kind of important for your life. So all of this kind of stuff is about saving yourself in a very difficult or dangerous situation.
Yeah, exactly. So this knowing SOS and knowing how to make SOS in any way that you can could actually save your life.
Yeah, I mean, even if you can kind of find two sticks and sort of bang them together, that could still get you something.
Make a noisy noise.
Yeah, just kind of yell, sort of Yeah, that would be a distress call. That would be a form of SOS in Morse code.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all there is to it, really. Just, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about in this article, but the main message is remember that signal just in case.
Yep.
You never know when you might need to use it.
Exactly. So that's all we've got.
Yep, thanks for listening to us today, everybody. For English Digest, I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.